Hey crew, it's Pitt and I am back with some more Esoterica. Today we are diving back into the works of Mr. Charles Haanel. This is the Master Key System. We are on part 8. We are reading aloud and discussing as we go along the various points that are brought to light by the text. It is not the format for everybody, but some people seem to find enjoyment in it, so you are more than welcome to tag along as we continue our exploration. Before we begin, however, if you are unfamiliar with me, any of my unconventional beliefs, or if at any point in time I lose you in the terminology, there will be several playlists linked in the corner above, in the box below, along with the original source material, so that you can get a better understanding of who I am and why I stand where I do and say the things that I do. A particular note today will almost certainly, once again, be the Infinite Integrations playlist, where I describe in much greater detail many of the things which are being talked about so far in this series. With that being said, we are going to dive in and continue our exploration of Part 8. Let's go. This part tells of the creative principle of the universe, what it is, how it takes form, and how it is brought into manifestation. This principle, being the underlying principle of all existence, must necessarily be governed by an immutable law. It is actually governed by 8 immutable laws. The 8 laws of creation are the fundamentals on how manifestation works, as well as karma. It tells how the character, health, and circumstances of the individual are formed, and suggests methods whereby desirable conditions and circumstances may be created. It tells how and why and when the material from which your future is to emerge is secured. It suggests methods and exercises by which you may secure complete control of the power which governs in this mighty field of action. No, it teaches you how to take a small measure of that control, right? Let's go ahead and do it. The Trinity. There is the body, which is the temple. It is the part that you navigate around in 5D space. There is the soul, which is the individualized piece of God, which is you, making the decisions for the temple. And then there is the spirit, which is the all-pervading, omniscient, omnipresent force that allows the now to turn into the next. It is everything. It is God. You can take a small measure of control of that spirit. You do not get complete control of that spirit, and you never will have complete control of that spirit. You have a small measure of control, just as you are a small individualized piece of divinity, but you are not a divine being. The same is true with the spirit. You can have a small measure of control of that spirit, but you cannot control all of creation. So this is already a point of contention, but not a major one. It is just terminology. Mighty, because it is the most important work which any individual can undertake. We are making our future now, today. When it comes, we shall have to accept what is given, but it will be too late to change it. But we can dominate it, control it, and make it what we want it to be. And this part explains how. The domination part is not going to be there. You can control it, but you do not dominate it. That is an important distinction. God allows it to happen. You don't make it. That is an important distinction in terminology. I will make a lot of those types of corrections. So if that is too much for you, this is not going to be the study for you. Introduction, Part 8. In this part, you will find that you may freely choose what you think, but the result of your thought is governed by an immutable law. It is governed by 8 immutable laws. Is this not a wonderful thought? Is it not wonderful to know that our lives are not subject to caprice or variability of any kind, that they are governed by law? This stability is our opportunity, because by complying with the law, we can secure the desired effect with invariable precision. That is, for the most part, true. The 8 laws of creation will tell you how. It is the law which makes the universe one grand pan of harmony. If it were not for the law, the universe would be a chaos instead of a cosmos. Here, then, is the secret of the origin of both good and evil. This is all the good and evil that ever was or ever will be. Let me illustrate. Thought results in action. If your thought is constructive and harmonious, the result will be good. If your thought is destructive or inharmonious, the thought will be evil. Yeah, you get what you focus on, right? If you're focusing on the positive, then you will attract positive. That is the law of attraction. If you're focused on the negative, you will pull in negative. That is the law of attraction. Like attracts like. Things of a similar nature tend to cluster. There are several other laws that play into this, right? The laws of momentum, the laws of purpose, the laws of returns. These are all things that play into this. That which you sow is given back to you, multiplied by your intentions at a factor that is variable. And so, yes, for the most part, what you focus on, what you intentionally create, will be returned to you. So if you are intentionally creating destructive or inharmonious, you will receive destructive and inharmonious. There is therefore but one law, one principle, one cause, one source of power, and good and evil are simply words which have been coined to indicate the result of our action and our compliance or non-compliance with this law. And again, I take extreme exception with that. There are 8 fundamental laws. They are immutable. They have been revealed to me through revelation, right? Through a spiritual experience. If that is too much for you, this is not the path for you. You are not going to find satisfaction here if you are looking for what is already commonly known. It's not working for anybody. What I am doing is actually working for me. I have healed myself. It has taken place. I am pulling abundance into my life. It has taken place. I am relaying to you the mechanics by which I have done so. Part of that is through direct revelation. The 8 laws of creation were directly revealed to me. The way that the 8 chakras interact and the way that you can bring those into balance have been directly revealed to me. You don't have to believe that. I am here to tell you that. But if you don't believe that, you will not enjoy the rest of the study. The importance of this is well illustrated in the lives of Emerson and Carlyle. Emerson loved the good, and his life was a symphony of peace and harmony. Was it? Was it really? Carlyle hated the bad, and his life was a record of perpetual discord and inharmony. Here we have 2 grand men, each intent upon achieving the same ideal, but one makes use of constructive thought and is therefore in harmony with natural law, and the other makes use of destructive thought and therefore brings upon himself discord of every kind and character. It is evident, therefore, that we are to hate nothing, not even the bad, because hatred is destructive. And we shall soon find that by entertaining destructive thoughts, we are sowing the wind, and we shall reap the whirlwind. That is true, right? What you focus on is what is returned. And if you are investing in hate, hate will be returned. That is an energetic investment, whether you believe that or not, whether you are intentional in it or not. The 8 laws of creation govern your life whether you are aware of them or not. Once you become aware of them, you are able to use them. You are able to ensure that you are aligned in the correct manner. That brings in the good, right? When you align yourself with the greater good, when you align yourself with your greater purpose, when you accept the responsibility for yourself, when you are taking the actions required for manifestation to happen, which are prayer, fasting, and meditation. When you are doing these things and obeying the 8 laws of creation, then you will pull into your life the good things. Most people who are creating the wrong things are doing so unintentionally by focusing upon the destructive. There's an awful lot of hate going around these days. It is evident if you look what the results of that is. You can see it manifest, even though they almost certainly have no clue what the 8 laws of creation are. you can see them manifesting in their life. They are being returned at the exponents. Part 8. Thought contains a vital principle because it is the creative principle of the universe, and by its nature will combine with other similar thoughts. As the one purpose of life is growth, all principle underlying existence must contribute to give it effect. Thought, therefore, takes form, and the law of growth eventually brings it into manifestation. There is no law of growth in the 8 laws of creation. You may freely choose what you think, but the result of your thought is governed by an immutable law. Any line of thought persisted in cannot fail to produce its result in the character, health, and circumstances of the individual. That is mostly true. Methods whereby we can substitute habits of constructive thinking for those which we have found produce Methods whereby we can substitute habits of constructive thinking for those which we have found produce only undesirable effects are therefore of primary importance. We all know that this is by no means easy. Mental habits are difficult to control, but it can be done, and the way to do it is to begin at once, to substitute constructive thought for destructive thought. Form a habit of analyzing every thought. If it is necessary, if its manifestation in the objective will be a benefit, not only to yourself, but to all to whom it may affect in any way, keep it, treasure it. It is of value. It is in tune with the infinite. It will grow and develop and produce fruit 100-fold. On the other hand, it will be well for you to keep this quotation from George Matthews Adams in mind. Learn to keep the door shut. Keep out of your mind, out of your office, and out of your world every element that seeks admittance with no definite helpful end in view. Mental discipline is an absolute requirement. It is something that you absolutely have to have before you can successfully, positively manifest anything. Prayer, fasting, and meditation are the keys to doing so. Prayer is the active part. It is when you express to God gratitude. It is when you express to God the things which you want. Fasting allows the Spirit or God to return to you the ideas behind it, right? The confirmations, the actual desires that you should have, the thoughts that should be there. That is a dedicated process. It does not happen immediately, and if you expect it to, you will be severely disappointed. It is a practice which you must practice. And if you do not, it will not happen, at least not in the correct way. If you begin this process by trying to get to the end of the process at the beginning, you're going to do it wrong, and you will get severely discouraged. I do not recommend that at all. But what you focus on will pull, right? Even if you don't understand the fundamental laws. If you are focusing on the positive, you will get more positive. But if you're focusing on the negative, then you will definitely get more negative. And you should inspect all of your thoughts. When you see something that upsets you, you should be checking yourself. You should be, what in this is mirroring to me? And sometimes it is simply them taking actions which are not in accordance with you, right? I'm not going to get political, but there are examples that you can draw of people who are diametrically opposed to you, right? Abortion is a good one. I am diametrically opposed to the thought of killing children. Some people are not. If you are, then that doesn't come into your life. But if you are aligned with the acceptance of that practice, then you will surround yourself with people who are accepting of that practice, and the results of that will be invariably negative. If your thought has been critical or destructive and has resulted in any condition or discord or inharmony in your environment, it may be necessary for you to cultivate a mental attitude which will be conducive to constructive thought. Yes, check your thoughts. The imagination will be found to be a great assistance in this direction. The cultivation of the imagination leads to the development of the ideal out of which your future will emerge. The imagination gathers up the material by which the mind weaves the fabric in which your future is to be clothed. Imagination is the light by which we can penetrate new worlds of thought and experience. Imagination is the mighty instrument by which every discoverer, every inventor, opened the way from precedent to experience. Precedent said, it cannot be done. Experience said, it is done. Imagination is a plastic power, molding the things of sense into new forms and ideals. Imagination is the constructive form of thought, which must precede every constructive form of action. I don't disagree with any of that, and that's why I'm not talking about it. A builder cannot build a structure of any kind until he has first received the plans from the architect, and the architect must get them from his imagination. The captain of industry cannot build a giant corporation which may coordinate hundreds of smaller firms and thousands of employees and utilize millions of capital until he has first created the entire work in his imagination. Objects in the material world are as clay in the potter's hand. It is in the master's mind that the real things are created, and it is by the use of the imagination that the work is done. In order to cultivate the imagination, it must be exercised. Exercise is necessary to cultivate mental muscle as well as physical muscle. It must be supplied with the nourishment or it cannot grow. Do not confuse imagination with fancy, or that form of daydreaming in which some people like to indulge. Daydreaming is a form of mental dissipation which may lead to mental disaster. If you are using your thoughts constructively, then they are not randomly wandering around. Daydreaming seems to be more of a random wandering around than it is a direct direction of your thoughts. Practicing discipline in your thoughts through prayer, fasting, and meditation will lead to less daydreaming and more creating the ideal that he is talking about in your mind. Now, for me, that is not a visual thing. We've talked about it often enough that I'm not going to try and harp on it in this video unless it becomes necessary. But conceptualization and visualization are close enough to get the job done. Visualization is probably a more handy tool, but it is simply a tool. The concept, the idea, is the important part, and the further that you can refine that, the better. Writing it down is one way of refining it, and speaking it aloud is also another way of refining it. Both of those are effective measures in creating manifestation, and if you do both of those, it will help you greatly. Constructive imagination means mental labor, by some considered to be the hardest kind of labor. You've never shingled or dug a ditch if you think that. I've done constructive imagination, right? I have a whole video game that you can't see, but it's on the wall right here that I have built maps for. I am creating the entire world. That is constructive imagination. It is nowhere near as hard as shingling a roof. That is simply a truth. It is not nearly, it has its trials. It is difficult. It is not easy, but it is not nearly as hard as the physical labor involved in construction. But if so, it yields the greatest returns. For all the great things in life have come to men and women who had the capacity to think, to imagine, and to make their dreams come true. When you have become thoroughly conscious of the fact that mind is the only creative principle, that it is omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent, and that you can consciously come into harmony with this omnipotence through your power of thought, it will have taken a long step in the right direction. That is true. The next step is to place yourself in position to receive this power. As it is omnipresent, it must be within you. We know that this is so because we know that all power is from within, but it must be developed. unfolded, cultivated. In order to do this, we must be receptive. And this receptivity is acquired just as physical strength is gained by exercise. The law of attraction will certainly and unerringly bring you the conditions, environment, and experiences in life corresponding with your habitual, characteristic, predominant mental attitude. That is true. Not what you think once in a while when you are in church or have just read a good book, but your predominant mental attitude is what counts. That is true. You cannot entertain weak, harmful, negative thoughts 10 hours a day and expect to bring about beautiful, strong, harmonious conditions by 10 minutes of strong, positive, creative thought. Mental discipline. Real power comes from within. All power that anybody can possibly use is within man, only waiting to be brought into visibility by his first recognizing it and then affirming it as his, working it into his consciousness until he becomes one with it. Mental discipline. People say that they desire abundant life, and so they do. But many interpret this to mean that if they will exercise their muscles or breathe scientifically, eat certain foods in certain ways, drink so many glasses of water every day or of just a certain temperature, keep out of draughts, they will attain the abundant life they seek. The result of such methods is but indifferent. However, when man awakens to the truth and affirms his oneness with all life, he finds that he takes on the clear eye, the elastic step, the vigor of youth. He finds that he has discovered the source of all power. That is mostly true, right? Now, you do have to do some of these things. You do have to exercise. If you're wanting to manifest positivity into your life, it is absolutely vital that you be moving your temple in positive directions. In those positive directions includes fasting, which can be contained with the certain foods in certain ways, but it involves prayer and meditation, and it involves physical exercise. You should be trying to have the best temple that you can. It is for your benefit. It's not for my benefit that you exercise. It is for your benefit. You should be doing that. Part of what happens when you exercise is you build an inner store of energy. And that energy you can invest in the method we described in the last video into your divine aura to create your reality. So, yes, you should be doing these things. They're not necessarily going to do it by themselves. You can exercise and never manifest, right? You can eat correctly and never manifest. You can drink all the water you want and never manifest. But if you are not taking those steps in addition to the thoughts, then you're not going to get what you want out of it. I promise you that. And I don't make promises lightly. All mistakes are but the mistakes of ignorance. Knowledge, gaining, and consequent power is what determines growth and evolution. The recognition and demonstration of knowledge is what constitutes power, and this power is spiritual power. And this spiritual power is the power which lies at the heart of all things. It is the soul of the universe. I laugh because he is guilty of, right? The mistakes of ignorance, I don't hold it against him. I am sure that he was able to manifest at least in part some of the things which he desired, but so far in this study, I doubt that he achieved the fullness of them, simply because of the things that he has said that have been misaligned. A greater alignment will bring greater manifestation. And so, yes, all mistakes are mistakes of ignorance, and the more you learn, the better you get, and the less mistakes you make. Knowledge and the power that comes from knowledge does determine your growth and evolution. You should constantly be seeking new knowledge. I do. This study is that. Every study that we do is that. But even outside of this, I do that recreationally. When I am doing my game building, I have stuff playing on my other screen over here that is learning or keeping up to date with current events. But I don't do a whole lot outside of that. It is knowledge and growth that I am looking for. I want to know what's going on in the world. I want to know about the scientific achievements of the day. I want to know about notable newsworthy events, even if I don't take them from the mainstream at all. Right? I rely upon independent news sources. I do not deal with the negative that is the regular news, period. And so knowledge gaining is the consequent power that determines growth and evolution. This knowledge is the result of man's ability to think. Thought is therefore the germ of man's conscious evolution. When man ceases to advance in his thoughts and ideals, his forces immediately begin to disintegrate, and his countenance gradually registers these changing conditions. Countenance is an interesting terminology here, because that is one of the ones that we saw in the unconventional Bible study where Jesus was talking about the power going out of him. That was his countenance. You should fall back and check that one out. Successful men make it their business to hold ideals of the conditions which they wish to realize. They constantly hold in mind the next step necessary to the ideal for which they are striving. Thoughts are the materials with which they build, and the imagination is their mental workshop. Mind is the ever-moving force with which they secure the persons and circumstances necessary to build their success structure, and imagination is the matrix in which all great things are fashioned. If you have been faithful to your ideal, you will hear the call when circumstances are ready to materialize your plans, and results will correspond in the exact ratio of your fidelity to your ideal. Kind of. The ideal, steadily held, is what predetermines and attracts the necessary conditions for its fulfillment. All right. My discontent here is going to be with this. Now, the exact ratio is true, but that ratio is variable, right? The 8 laws of creation will describe it better, but the law of returns is the square cube law. For every growth, there is a corresponding growth. So for every foot taller, you get 3 times bigger. It is the square cube. Or for every doubling in size, you get 3 times the volume. That is the square cube. And that is the fundamental law by which it works. It is the return of threes. The return of threes begins at 3. Then it steadily increases. It becomes 4, and then 5, and then 6, and then 7, and then 8, and then it starts to diminish. Those are the laws of returns. So the exact ratio is true, but it is a variable ratio. It is in accordance with the intentions behind the thoughts. That is why it is so vitally important, and that I say so many times in every video, the 8 laws of creation. Those are the fundamental structures by which the returns are made. It is thus that you may weave a garment of spirit and power into the web of your entire existence. It is thus that you may lead a charmed life and be forever protected from all harm. No, won't be all harm. It is thus that you may become a positive force whereby conditions of opulence and harmony may be attracted to you. It is important to note that no matter how much you manifest, no matter how well aligned you are, bad things will still happen. Things that are outside of your acceptance of the plan will happen. Disease will happen no matter how much manifestation you do. To a certain extent, right? Like, I have healed myself. I have removed from myself limitations that have been presented to me by external forces. But that doesn't mean that I cannot develop a further illness farther down the line. I have already done the things. I have spent the time. I did the prayer, the fasting, the meditation. I've done the internal work on my shadow. I have balanced my virtues and vices. I have taken all of the steps, and I still may get diagnosed with something tomorrow that will change everything completely. that doesn't mean that what has happened was misaligned or didn't work. And you have to be able to accept the no. We've talked about that several times. That is part of it. Sometimes there is a bottleneck of disease. Sometimes there is a bottleneck of loss. You have already agreed to these bottlenecks. That is part of your incarnation here voluntarily to learn these lessons. Grief is a lesson. Sadness is a lesson. Pain is a lesson. And there is always a reason why it happens. Sometimes the why is simply to experience it. All things serve a purpose, even the misalignments. This is the leaven which is gradually permeating the general consciousness and is largely responsible for the conditions of unrest which are everywhere evident. Here's where we point out where they were in time and where we are in time, right? This was just after the First World War and just before the Second one. Unrest, maybe? Yeah, I would say so. It's not that long after the American Civil War. And so the unrest is very much evident. This was the beginning of the women's suffrage movement, right? This was like 2 years away from women really going and starting to achieve the ability to vote. It is several decades before the civil rights movement, where we extended that to some more of humanity. But the conditions of change were there, and unrest was there. And the leaven, which was part of that, was holding back those particular groups, right? That was the intentionality that brought about the returns according to the square root, the square cube, the law of response and the law of returns. That is what happened there. So their point in time, there was a lot of unrest. Now, it is also true that right now there is a great deal of unrest. We are currently embroiled in a highly contentious political battle here in the United States of America, and there are definitely forces at work that are aligned for the positive and forces at work that are aligned for the negative, and you are free to decide which is which. I am not going to try to influence you in that, although I definitely hold my opinions, and I have stated them before. That is a period that is happening now too, and those focuses are tests for you, right? Are you focused on what you want or what you don't? Is that your focus? Is it, this is the plan going forward that I want to happen? Or is it, this is what I am doing so that that won't happen? That is important. That is part of the timeline determination for you. I know where mine is going. Where is yours? And if you don't know what I mean by that, fall back to the rest of the Infinite Integrations playlist and learn how to take control of your timeline. I have control of your timeline if you are not intentionally doing it, so you're riding along. But if you are intentionally creating the negative, then you are not on my timeline. In your last exercise, you created a mental image, some of us. You brought it from the invisible into the visible. Now, I want you to take an object and follow it back to its origination. See of what it really consists. If you do this, you will develop imagination, insight, perception, and sagacity. These come not by the superficial observation of the multitude, but by a keen analytical observation which sees below the surface. That is a handy tool. That is something that you should definitely do. Learn to think critically about a variety of things. When you pick up your phone, think about the different components that make up the phone and where they originate from. That might help you make decisions in your life. When you pick up your pair of glasses, do the same thing. Do that with your thoughts. When a thought occurs to you, go back and root cause it. See where it came from. What can I learn from this? What is the expectation going forward? What can I do to change the expectation going forward? These are practices which will develop in you imagination, insight, perception, and sagacity, which is probably the more important of all of them. It is the few who know the things which they see are only effects, and understand the causes by which these effects were brought into existence. That is true. This is a narrow path. I say all of the time, I am on a narrow path. This is a narrow gate. Right? It requires right motivations and right actions all the time. Does that mean that you will achieve those all the time? No. But your intention should be that. And when you recognize that you are out of alignment, you need to realign yourself. You need to recenter yourself upon the correct perspective. That will change things, right? There are very few people who are willing to do the prayer, fasting, and meditation to effectively do this. There are a lot of people that read through this particular book and do not receive the benefits thereof. They don't put in the work. There are people who watch my videos and do not receive the benefits thereof. They don't put in the work. I put in the work. I want you to put in the work, but putting in the work is required, and that makes it a narrow path. It is much easier to allow someone else to take the responsibility than it is to assume the responsibility for yourself. And most people will not make the harder choice. They will take the easier route. You, if you are this far along in my video, you want the harder route. Take it. Claim it. It is yours. It is yours by birthright. I take the hardest part of any job. If I'm in a group of 15 people and there are 15 jobs to be done, I am choosing first the hardest part. That is the intentionality that you need to do this. If you don't have that, you're not going to get it. Take the same position as heretofore and visualize a battleship. See the grim monster floating on the surface of the water. There appears to be no life anywhere about. All is silence. You know that by far the largest part of the vessel is underwater, out of sight. You know that the ship is large and as heavy as a 20-story skyscraper or the National Gallery. You know that there are hundreds of men ready to spring to their appointed task instantly. You know that every department is in charge of able, trained, skilled officers who have proven themselves competent to take charge of this marvelous piece of mechanism. You, sir, have never served in the United States Navy. I can say that because I have, and I have met some of these officers, and they have not done that. By and large, you know that although it lies apparently oblivious to everything else, it has eyes which see everything from miles around, and nothing is permitted to escape its watchful vision. You know that while it appears quiet, submissive, and innocent, it is prepared to hurl a steel projectile weighing thousands of pounds at an enemy many miles away. Thousands of pounds, huh? This and much more you can bring to mind with comparatively no effort whatsoever. But how did the battleship come to be where it is? How did it come into existence in the first place? All of this you want to know if you are a careful observer. Follow the great steel plates through the foundries. See the thousands of men employed in their production. Go still further back and see the ore as it comes from the mine. See it loaded on the barges or trucks. See it melted and properly treated. Sorry. Go back still further and see the architect and engineers who planned the vessel. Let the thought carry you back still further in order to determine why they planned the vessel. You will see that you are now so far back that the vessel is something intangible. It no longer exists. It is now only a thought existing in the brain of the architect. But from where did the order come to plan the vessel? Probably from the Secretary of War or the First Lord of the Admiralty. Probably this vessel was planned long before the war was thought of, and Parliament or Congress had to pass a bill appropriating the money. Possibly there was opposition and speeches for or against the bill. Whom do these members of Parliament or these congressmen represent? They represent you and me, so that our line of thought begins with the battleship and ends with ourselves. And we find in the last analysis that our own thought is responsible for this and many other things, of which we seldom think, and a little further reflection will develop the most important fact of all. And that is, if someone had not discovered the law by which the tremendous mass of steel and iron could be made to float upon the water, instead of immediately going to the bottom, the battleship could not have come into existence at all. This law is that the specific gravity of any substance is the weight of any volume of it, compared with an equal volume of water. The discovery of this law revolutionized every kind of ocean travel, commerce, and warfare, and made the existence of the battleship possible. You will find exercises of this kind invaluable. When the thought has been trained to look below the surface, everything takes on a different appearance. The insignificant become significant, the uninteresting, interesting. The things which we suppose to be of no importance are seen to be the only real, vital things in existence. Part 8. Questions. What is the imagination? A form of constructive thought, the light by which we penetrate new worlds of thought and experience, the mighty instrument by which every inventor or discoverer opened the way from present to experience. What is the result of imagination? The cultivation of the imagination leads to the development of the ideal out of which your future will emerge. How may it be cultivated? By exercise. It must be supplied with nourishment or it cannot live. How does imagination differ from daydreaming? Daydreaming is a form of mental dissipation, while imagination is a form of constructive thought which must precede every constructive action. What are mistakes? The result of ignorance. What is knowledge? The result of a man's ability to think. What is the power with which successful men build? Mind is the ever-moving force with which they secure the persons and circumstances necessary to complete their plans. What predetermines the result? The ideal, held steadily in mind, attracts the necessary conditions for its fulfillment. What is the result of a keen, analytical observation? The development of imagination, insight, perception, and sagacity. To what do these lead? Opulence and harmony. Look to this today. Look to this day. For it is life, the very life of life. In its brief course lie all the verities and realities of your existence. The bliss of growth, the glory of action, the splendor of beauty. For yesterday is but a dream, and tomorrow is only a vision. But today, well lived, makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. Look well, therefore, to this day. From the Sanskrit. Advice. Remember, fully to understand grand and beautiful thought requires, perhaps, as much time as to conceive it. Joubert. If you wish to enjoy the utmost practical benefit from the Master Key, go slowly. I am not doing that. Transfuse into your mind the contents of one part only each week for 24 weeks. Take your time. I have already onboarded most of this information. Realize the meaning of every phrase. Consult the Master Key constantly as your perpetual help and stimulus. Each time you read the work, you will get a better understanding of the eternal cosmic principles. Tell others of the Master Key so that more and more people may reciprocate with you as conscious adepts in harmony, the publishers. And that is going to conclude part 8. And once again, I don't have a whole lot in conclusion, so hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a series of somewhat difficult topics. I understand that I have some unconventional beliefs and a tendency to step on toes when I relay those beliefs. It is not intentional, but I do not apologize for it. I am here to clearly elucidate upon the things which we see. Hopefully, that is what I am doing. Hopefully, you can take value from the things I am relaying to you. I am relaying to you my experience in these things. I don't speak from speculation. I speak from practical application. Through the use of prayer, fasting, and meditation, the direct manipulation of the creative forces of the universe, the Holy Spirit, I have effected change in my life. I have healed my throat. Now, is it fully healed? Not quite. The cyst is gone. My vocal cords are still repairing themselves, and that is a blessing, and it's taking some time. I am fine with that. What I relay to you, you don't have to accept. I am here to tell you, not convince you. But if you can onboard these concepts, if you can assimilate them into your life and to begin to diligently pursue them through the practical application of them, you can affect change in your life too. That is my belief. It may not be true, but I believe it. Hopefully, if you like what I'm doing here, let me know down below. Give me a like, share, and a sub. Throw me a comment if you agree or disagree. If it remains respectful, it gets to remain up. And if you have a work that you would like to see me work through in the manner that we are doing here, leave that in the comments as well. If you really like what I'm doing, hit me with that super thanks. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you were here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pit State. Peace.